Okay, everyone, let's wrap up the topic of the process modeling for today's class. So on Tuesday's class, we learned about the basic element of DFD. So let's remind that. First of all, this DFD consists of entity, external entity, and process, data store, and data flow. And as you can see here, the different element are described different symbol. So process is an activity or function performed for specific business reasons. For example, generate report or calculate the price or place the order, such things. And this will be the main things that you have to describe in data flow diagram. And it can be manual, by the human, or it can be computerized. Basically, you will include all of this process, whether it is manual or computerized at this point. And this process symbol will include the number to identify the order between the processes and the name, what this process is about. And it is usually uh, uh, excuse me. So usually described as the birthplace because it is the activity. It's similar with use case, as we did, and description. And lastly, it's kind of rule. This process should have at least one input and one output. If it doesn't have that, this process is, meaningless. So the process should have one output and one input at least. So what kind of activity you could define as the processes? Here you can refer to a very typical activity that business process include to achieve the goal. And also when you design your deliverable tool, you might consider this specific list of the actions to define your process model. For example, perform computation like a calculating grade point average or calculating the cumulative GPA, something like that. And also make decisions, if there is any logical branch this system should have go through, then you will include that as also logical process. And also, if your system will organize the data into useful information like a dashboard, definitely that is also the process that you have to define. So please refer to these logical processes and think about what actions and process your system will do for your deliverable too. And second element is the data flow. It is the like a piece or the logical collection of data for the process. It can be input, it can be output, but it's about the data. And it will mainly define as the noun, for example, the customer order, or customer ID, such a things. So this data flow will be defined on the arrows, to connect different processes. Third element is the data store. The data that is produced should be recorded to our database, right? Because we want to use for the certain purpose, for transaction or the analytic purpose. So the data output will be will be saved into our data store. And this data store, can be defined as the noun, like the data flow, Also, this data store should have the data flow and input data flow and output data flow. If data flow leaving the data store, then we can say this process retrieve the data from the data store. And also if data flow enter to the data store, then it is about recording and saving the new data. Lastly, we have external entity which interact with the system. And as I said before, it can be a person, organization, or a system which interact with our system. For example, supply chain management system should interact with the like order processing system, right? So in this case, the order processing system can be one external entity which define our data flow diagram. But the point is that all of these external entities should have some kind of interaction with our system. And now we want to draw the data flow diagram. And business processes are highly interconnected to each other, as you know, as you learn in the management courses like value chain. So it's really difficult to describe whole business process this system cover in the one DFD. So the point is that we will break down this whole picture into the hierarchical format so we can easily understand which sub-processes should be defined, should provide to support users' work. So that is the one important like a principle when you draw the data flow diagram. So namely the decomposition. So that is the breaking down the higher level of DFD into the sub-level DFD. So like here, you can see there's higher data flow diagram, which is called as context diagram. And from this picture, we can just understand, okay, this is the information system about sample, whatever. And there are three entities that interact with this system. However, we cannot understand what this system actually do. So in our child diagram, which is level 0 diagram, we will show the specific sub-processes that this information system do with this entity, which is this composition. And as we already seen in our use case scenario, one action can be also broken down into sub-processes. For example, placing order, right? So in that sense, this process AA, for example, process 1, which is placing order, can be again broken down into the level 1 diagram. So after you will get the single purpose action, you will keep breaking down this process into the sub-processes to actually see and unpack what this system will do. So that is the principle 1, decomposition, when you draw the DFD. And definitely your deliverable 2 also follow this rule. Okay, so let's see the hierarchy of the DFD. First of all, we will define the context diagram like this. We will mainly capture the external entity and their data flow and what this system is about. And in our level 0 diagram, which is the child diagram of the context diagram, will decompose what is the main activity of this information system. And then this main activity will again broken down to level 1 diagram, to unpack how actually placing the order, for example. And if this level 1 diagram has the single value action, single purpose action, then we will not decompose this into the separate level 2 diagram. It depends how much your process is complex. Okay, next principle is balancing. So it is about ensuring consistency between the parents diagram and child diagram. So for example, the data flow defined in the context diagram should samely appear on the level 0 diagram. So let's this example. So here you can see the level 0 diagram of certain information system. And you can see there is 3 entity and 2 data store. And this entity A will enter the data flow of the V. And after the process BB, it will get the output of the data flow W. So this part should exactly appear in the child diagram. So let's see here. In level process 1 and level 1 diagram, this part, you can see exactly the same data flow is defined. And also after the process AA1, we get the data store P as the data flow A should go to data store P, right? And also, as you can see in this chart diagram, after our AA2 sub-processes, data flow A will go to the data store P. This process AA1, AA2, and AA3 are different from the literature diagram because we break down this process AA1 into these sub-processes, right? But this part, the process AA, the data flow V should appear in our level 1 diagram, and the output of data flow A should go to data store P, and it is exactly reflected in our level 1 diagram, right? So this is the balancing. What level 0 diagram shows should exactly appear in our child diagram. How about this one? It's about process 3, right? Process 3 level 1 diagram. Let's see. The process 3 diagram, after whatever sub-processes they have, it should produce the data flow tree to the data store P, right? And as you can see this, after finishing sub-processes of the processes 3, the output flow data tree goes to the data store P. And also, who is the entity of process 3 is entity B, who will enter the data flow X. And also you can see here, entity B enter the data flow X for this system, for this process. So it is balancing. And the point is that all of this one or the level of the child diagram should fully make up this process or the process higher process. Okay, so I think most of them I already covered, so quickly review this content. So first of all, when you draw the DFD, you will define context diagram, which is the highest level of DFD. It will show the context. So who is the users and what will be the main output, that entity A can get and what this system is about. So for example, in your deliverable 1 or 2, maybe some of you will have manuscript management system as the main process, and entity A can be the author, which submit their manuscript as the input data flow, And as the output flow, W, this author will get the result of the review about their manuscript. So this context diagram will show such a kind of very broad picture of this system, but we don't know how actually this system, will work and what function and what data store it will use. So in the level 0 diagram, we will show the specific main activity. For example, for the manuscript management. So here, the differences from the context diagram is the data store defined. And also you can see there are a couple of sub-processes that define what this manuscript management system is about. So with this level 0 diagram, you can broadly understand, okay, what specific main function this system will do and how they are interconnected, right? And what data store it will use. So compared to the context diagram, you can get more understanding in this level 0 diagram. However, for example, still you don't know how actually, process the manuscript evaluation, for example. Manuscript evaluation will be defined in many sub-processes. For example, checking the manuscript and verifying it and, assigning to the reviewer and getting the feedback from the reviewer and calculating this total score and generating reports, such as things. So this kind of sub processes about each main activity of your system will be defined in level 1 diagram. Okay, so the main process, for example, evaluating manuscript process, will be broken down into the level 1 diagram to exactly show what internal processes to proceed the manuscript evaluation processes. Make sense? And definitely, as I said, these sub processes should fully and completely make up the parent process, for example, evaluating manuscript. It should not miss any important process, to complete the manuscript evaluation. And also, if your level 1 diagrams processes should be broken down into, level 2 diagram and 3 diagram, you will do that. And if you think each of the processes of the level 1 diagram it's just the single process and single purpose action, then you can stop, the composition at the level 1 diagram. As you might notice, this composition process is pretty complex because usually one use case and process will involve, a couple of sub-processes. So it is important to carefully number each process so we can easily understand and manage each of this data flow. For example, for the context diagram, you can define it as process 0 and as the parent, as the child diagram of the context diagram, you can number it as the integer value 1, 2, 3. And also, if you want to break down the process 1 into level 1 processes, you will use the dot, to show it is the sub-process of the, for example, level 1 processes, like 1.1. This is the level 1 processes of the process 1. 1.2, it will be level 1 processes of the process 1. So yeah, this is the another standard you can follow when you define the DFD because it makes you easy to understand the relevant and interconnected processes with this numbering. Okay, and as we see like a scenario of drone tech company, drone customization order, always there can be logical branch. For example, the drone component is not available. It will show, like a expected delivery time and day, so the customer can choose whether they want to accept it or reject it. So all of this logical branch and alternative data flow should be defined in your DFD. And when you use the case tool, also you can enter the text-based process description because as you can see here, uh, you want to see much more detailed information about process AA. For example, what is the trigger? What is the condition, right? So for that, you can also add the structured or text-based description when you use the case tool. So on Tuesday class, we will actually do some exercise creating DFD because when you just listen this lecture and review the textbook, you might think, okay, it's very straightforward, and it can be done very quickly. But actually, in reality, it's different. You cannot create this DFD in one time. Unlike use case scenario, you have to keep revise and update, because process consists of a lot of different actions. And if you miss anything, the process will not be completed. So it's really important to comprehensively capture all of this action and define it into the DFD. So it's pretty complex than you think about. So we will actually do some exercise to create the DFD. But before that, let's briefly see the like a procedure to create the DFD. It's kind of heuristic. So first of all, you can build a context diagram, right? Based on the use case scenario, you already know who is the external entity, the primary actor of this system. And also based on system request, you know what this system is about, right? So you can create the context diagram. And also based on use case scenario, you have major processes that will define the context diagram. So what this manuscript management system will do, right? Evaluating manuscript, retrieving the manuscript, right that. So all of these major activity and actions will be defined as the uh, level 0 diagram. And after that, you will create the FD fragment, like you will focus on just the one major activity. For example, evaluating manuscript. You will focus on this process and you will broken down this evaluating manuscript process into the sub processes. And also about the other action, for example, managing the first draft or managing the like a royalty, for example. You will also focus on this process isolatedly, and then you will also break down, okay, how we will proceed and process this royalty, for the authors. After that, we will like combine this DFD to define as the level 0 diagram and so forth. After that, we will validate the DFD with users because you can miss, some of the important actions to complete these processes. So we will work through with the users to verify whether there is any missing processes in the DFD. So basically, you will create context diagram and you will create what's the major processes and their, chart diagram, which break down the major activity into the sub processes. And then, we will verify whether this DFD is complete or not. So on Tuesday class, let's quickly review the textbook cases and let's start doing some exercise to actually draw the DFD. And that will definitely help you, submit your deliverable too. So at this point, I will skip it. To finish this lecture video, I want to remind you guys, please complete the mini quiz 4 on Canvas. The due date is this Sunday, and the topic is about use case and process modeling. And also, please do not forget submitting revised version of Deliverable 1 by the deadline. So, yeah, I hope you guys have a great weekend and I will see you on Tuesday class.